Hello, my name is Christoph Wichmann, and in this video I would like to explain how to deploy the Axway API Management solution on an AWS-EKS Kubernetes environment using our Helm chart. For that I have prepared my Kubernetes environment, so that means I have two worker nodes up and running. I have prepared a namespace API Management or APIM, which is basically empty. Within the namespace default, I have also deployed an external DNS service, which helps me to automatically configure the Route 53 at AWS when ingress resources are configured, just to let you know that I'm going to use a certain domain and that domain here should be used or is configured here for external DNS whenever such a resource is configured. So besides that, the API management namespace is more or less empty. I have only small services for mocked APIs. I have no persistent volume claims. I have no config maps and so on. So to, of course, I have also my kubectl configured. So that means kubectl get nodes is talking to that Kubernetes environment. I have Helm configured with the following version, and just for your reference, kubectl version, so that you also see which version I'm using here for my Kubernetes environment. So that means exceeds support in minor version, okay, but it worked before as I tested. So let me clear that and let's get started with the Helm chart. So this is the page I'm using as a reference, or the documentation. This is the API Management Helm chart for the GitHub repository Axway Cloud Automation. And here I'm going to get started. I go straight to the installation, to the AWS-EKS deployment example, and here it's saying that I should use the local values YAML file. So let me download that YAML file, which is the recommendation. So now I have downloaded this values file, and my recommendation in general, and I will also split up the videos into that different components, is not to install all components at once. Instead, at least at the beginning, start with one component after the next to make sure that, let's say, you are not overwhelmed by errors, troubles, issues, and so on. So that's why I'm saying, okay, the admin node manager should be deployed, but the API manager as a second component should not be deployed at the beginning. The same also for API traffic, and the API portal should also not be deployed. So false, and Cassandra we don't want at the beginning, we don't need, especially. So MySQL metrics database we don't need, MySQL portal we don't need, etc. So that means let me disable all this, and agents are not used anyway. So then, as you may know, we are not delivering pre-baked images which you can use directly, and that's why I have configured my Docker repository to use and my image tag to use, and of course this is the domain name you saw already, which I will use. In general, you find all the possible documentation parameters within the base values file. So that means it is a good approach to have this values file open, because here you can see all the possible variables, configuration options you may set, including documentation. So here you see, for instance, the Docker repository you have to say, set because there's nothing set initially or as a default, the image tag, the domain name, and so on and so forth. So in my case, I'm using an automated approach to build my images, and that's why I'm using this Docker repository. Let me bring that up, which is basically here, and here I have my admin node manager image deployed. So you see this is the Docker repository. automated, and this is the image tag from the November release, so brand new. Let me copy that and just make sure that we're using the correct image tag. This one here should be the one I would like to have in my values file. So this is the base image tag, which will be used for all services. However, you can say that the admin node manager should use another image tag than the API manager. So anything else? The image pull registry is not interesting for that one here, but because it is public. But this one here can be used, for instance, to download other Docker images. It's used by all services, by all deployments to download secure images. I do have that image pull secret registered in my Kubernetes cluster. So the admin node manager is enabled, and I mean, before we get started, I would like to reduce this a little bit to demonstrate what happens. So let's say we are just saying that the admin node manager should be there and no ingress, or maybe the ingress is enabled but it won't work because this is the settings for the AWS environment. So let me now get started with my local values file, and I'm going back to the documentation and go to the main page, and now I can say Helm install into my namespace, my values file, my local values file, the release name, and then this is the Helm chart version we are going to use. Okay, now let's say don't execute it. Helm install namespace API management. So the file is that local values file, and this is the Helm chart we are going to use. So now we can specify a name. I missed the name. Just put it here. Axway API Management is the release name. So now very likely, of course, the pod will be deployed, the pods. So that means from the namespace, get the pods and watch them. But it will not be reachable at the end. So obviously there's also a Redis which could have been enabled, but we don't care at the moment. The discovery agent, the same thing. But the interesting pod is that admin node manager. Let me just check what the admin node manager is doing. So by kubectl logs admin node manager and see what happens. So there was an error concerning the matrix database because the matrix database is not yet deployed, and I don't care at this point in time. I'm just waiting for the admin node manager to come up. So this service is started. This is from the health check performed by Kubernetes. And if I now say get pods, I see that the admin node manager is running, but I cannot reach it. And that's because I have not yet instructed the AWS controller, which is deployed in my Kubernetes environment. So I can go to my Kubernetes, and I think it is deployed into kube system. I have my AWS load balancer controller, and this has not yet done anything because by intention I have not provided the necessary annotations for AWS. So let me do this now and say I would like to have ingress enabled. So that means I'm basically reverting all this and say that I would like to have this controlled by the AWS load balancer. It should be internet facing. I would like to group later on all services in one load balancer. That's why the group name should be Axway API Management. The listen port for the load balancer should be HTTPS 443. The backend protocol is also HTTPS and also accepted as Kibana is performing a redirect. Okay, maybe that's not super perfect for an admin node manager, but it should be okay also that way. So let me make an upgrade, because now you can constantly run, instead of Helm install, you say Helm upgrade. So let me do this. I say upgrade. And if I now go to my Kubernetes environment, my AWS environment, I see this is my load balancer, which is controlled by the load balancer controller. And if I check now the rules, at the moment there is only Grafana, Kubernetes dashboards, and metrics. So now it is deployed, and very likely you see now there's also an admin node manager deployed, which on this domain. So, and of course name resolution and everything takes a moment, but let me check if the root 53 is also properly configured, because sometimes this has some difficulties and it doesn't work. So let me check for the hosted zone. On EKS, so admin node manager, we do have this one here that points to a load balancer, and sometimes this is what I do see is sometimes not the correct load balancer. I think here it is the case. So if I go back to my load balancer and check for that one here, I believe that's not the right load balancer. So let me check. So this is, I don't know, this is some kind of a history or whatever. So that means that external DNS thing sometimes has, at least in my environment, a problem. To solve that, I'm going to delete that record and wait for the DNS, external DNS service, to re-edit, and then the next time it might be correct. So now it is correct. I don't know why this happens, but this is what I do see. So that means now it points to my load balancer, and that external load balancer with that HTTP listen socket has now a rule, the admin node manager rule, and this goes to the target group. And let's check for this target group when it is loaded. Come on. Okay, this is my target group, and it's already everything configured. So that means HTTPS is the name of the service, and it's already healthy. So that means my admin node manager is up and running. So just for reference, this is the health check we have configured in the annotation. This goes on the traffic port. So let's check and let's look up online if now the domain is already registered and can be used. Yeah, it looks good. And so that means there might be a chance now to call the admin node manager. And that looks good. Admin okay, but at the moment, of course, no topology, an empty admin node manager. And if I go to the pods here in my API management namespace, I do see now that the admin node manager is up and running for the last 6-7 minutes. So in the next video, I'm going to enable the API manager, and let's see how this works.